Like and subscribe on the way in the door, my people. I hope you all are having a truly fantastic day today. You all know I normally don't do videos on Saturdays, but here we are. I felt the need to do my response to this JxmyHighRoller video. I've seen a couple of other content creators. Shout out to Dreamers Pro. Shout out to Sports and Fitness Rants. I've seen a couple other content creators do response videos. And I finally had a chance to sit down and watch the JxmyHighRoller video. We are done with the 90s in its entirety. And I said, let me go ahead and do a video on this since I just watched it and things are kind of fresh on my mind. So first thing I want to address that he said that this whole thing was started basically by the old heads complaining about the younger generation. He basically said that us old heads saw a video or a picture of LeBron flopping and we just ran with it. Like we just, kept posting about it and we kind of couldn't let that go. But let me say this. Anybody who doesn't have a problem with flopping, I have a problem with you. If you don't see flopping as a serious problem, to me, that's a problem. To me, that damages your credibility to even talk about basketball if you don't think flopping is cheating the game. And if you don't think a person who would flop lacks a certain integrity for the game. To me, that is a serious problem, and I don't know how you can be dismissive of that. Secondly, let me say this. There has always been the battle between the older and younger generation on everything, whether it's sports, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's life in general. And I actually think that normally that is a necessary balance to happen. It's normal for the older generation to try to hold the younger generation to a standard, because that's what this is about. The younger generation never understands that. But let me say this, as a person who grew up playing music. As I was coming up, there were older musicians holding me to a standard that I appreciate now. So a lot of times when you're younger, you don't see it. But here's the thing. It is the older generation's job to hold the younger people to a standard. It is the younger generation's job to push whatever it is forward, whether that's music, whether that's sports. It's the younger generation's job to try to push the boundaries. It's the older generation's job to make sure that while you are pushing the boundaries, that you still keep the integrity of the game, that you still keep the standards high for the game. In other words, if you want to do more dribbling moves, do it without carrying. Do it without traveling. But I guess at the end of the day, we're just looking at, a completely different game, because at this point, it seems that these things aren't called anymore. But okay. So let me get to something he said that I agree with. I totally agree with the fact that there is an NBA before Michael Jordan and after Michael Jordan. To me, after Michael Jordan showed everyone what the ultimate competitor looked like and pushed the boundaries of what we thought was possible in basketball. The next generation that came out was the start of what we see now. And what I mean by that, it was the start of the generation that started wanting more for less work, with the exception of Kobe Bryant. But it was the generation who was a bit more flashy, but still didn't grasp the concept of the amount of work that Michael Jordan put in to become who he was. So to me, you had a bunch of cocky athletes coming into the league. And even Kobe Bryant. I always say, I love Kobe Bryant, but another difference between him and Mike, to me, is Kobe was more cocky. Again, Michael Jordan, to me, he was confident about his skills, and that confidence was based off of logic. His thought process was that, hey, if I put in the work, and if I'm working harder than everybody else, and if I'm working on all my weaknesses, then I have nothing to fear on the basketball court. But again, the generation after Michael Jordan, Allen Iverson. I love Allen Iverson. But if you follow my channel, you know that I did a video talking about how the negative effect that Allen Iverson had on basketball. Because again, I think Allen Iverson is kind of the beginning of the entitled type of attitude. You know, again, you know, even the whole thing with the dress. You know, some people may not agree. But I feel like if you're getting paid millions of dollars, if someone asks you to dress a certain way, that shouldn't be a big deal. You know. But yeah, I agree with Jimmy that there is a line where Michael Jordan, it's before Michael Jordan, and then it's the players who came after Michael Jordan. Now let's address this whole thing where he's basically saying that the league is better today. I got a lot to say about this. First of all, we have to answer the question, does more moves actually equal better? Because he mentioned the fact about better handles and, shooting more threes or so-called better shooters, which I'm pretty sure I just seen Chris Broussard kind of debunk that notion a day or two ago on The Odd Couple. But does more moves actually constitute better? One of the things that made Michael Jordan so effective is that he was surgical. Like, Michael Jordan's mentality was the least amount of moves possible to get the job done. Again, I feel like I've mentioned this in the last few days at least 2 or 3 times now. Going back to what Carmelo Anthony said about playing MJ one-on-one and MJ teaching him that, hey, you should be able to score off of 1 dribble, 2 dribbles, 3 dribbles. Like, if you work on doing that, what you are working on is efficiency and getting the most while doing the least. So just because a player has tons of dribble moves, does that actually make you better? That's the question. If one player has to do 5 moves to get past you and the other player has to do 2 moves to get past you, who's better? Just because the player can do 5 moves, does that make him better? I don't think so. And just even thinking about that, it kind of goes to the whole GOAT debate where we're talking about LeBron James has 4 championships in 21 years while Michael Jordan had 6 and 15. It's about how much can you get done in the least amount of time. Again, we're talking about efficiency. Michael Jordan being able to score off, 2 or 3 dribbles is more impressive than someone having 10 dribble moves they can do, especially when they have to use 6, 7 dribble moves to get past you, which is what we see a lot in today's NBA. And then the other question I have to pose to everyone, especially you fanboys, is this. Is it really a fact that the game is going to keep evolving? Is music better now than it was 30 years ago? Because here's my theory on this. First of all, let me say this. I think everything is influenced by the culture in which you live. We live in an entitled culture, so the product of basketball is coming from an entitled place. It is coming from a selfish place. And when it is coming from that, there is no way that you are going to beat a team that is truly unified as a team. Those 96 Chicago Bulls would destroy any and every team today. The culture which you live in affects the music that's being created. It affects the mentality behind the athletes. And so let me give you this example. This is why I say, to me, there is a point at which things don't necessarily get better, they only get different. And you could argue that they get worse in some cases, and I believe that is the case. Again, like I said, to me, just because you have more skills technically, if you want to classify it as that, just because you have more moves doesn't mean that you're a better player. Again, we're talking about who's better, someone who needs 10 moves to get past you or someone who needs 2 dribbles to get past you. Who's better? And again, both are a skill. because Michael Jordan worked on using the least amount of dribbles to be effective. So let me give you this example. Like the iPhone. Every single year, they add some ridiculous feature to the iPhone. We can classify that feature as flash. Every year, they make the iPhone a little more flashier. But is it better? Are we going to look 5 years from now and be like, oh, man, that 2029 iPhone is blowing the 2024 iPhone out the water? Or are you going to look at it and be like, man, they are overcharging me for these useless features? And that's kind of what we got in the NBA right now, right? These players are getting overpaid for some useless features. So yeah, to me, the culture influences everything. It influences the athletes. And let me tell you this about the 90s. So let's talk about this. Basketball, what was started in 1891, I believe. In 1891, I think the leagues first kind of came into play in 1936. I believe that's when a NBL was formed. And in 1949, that's when the ABA and NBL merger happened and actually formed the NBA. So I think evolution happens like this. You have the beginning of something. And then you have years of evolution. But at a certain point, the evolution stops. I don't think it's just going to continue evolving. I think at a certain point, it gets to the point to where it is most effective and the evolution stops. Anything after that, it just becomes different. And most times, it just becomes flash. It just becomes needless features that don't actually contribute to the functionality of the product or the functionality of whatever it is we're talking about. So basketball in the 90s, to me, was the perfect timing of where in the culture, people still believed in hard work, but there was enough things changing and technology happening to push the boundary. So to me, the 90s was that perfect period in time to where everything met to not only to where the league was competitive, the league was more team-centric. It was more built around the team. Because again, I think after Michael Jordan, that's kind of when players started to become more about themselves. Players started to become more selfish. That was the beginning of that. I think Michael Jordan showed everybody the possibilities, and then everybody wanted that. So that's when you had your Allen Iversons, your Tracy McGrady's, your Kobe Bryant's. Again, Kobe was like the anomaly in that anomaly because he still understood that he has to work very hard to get to that level. I think everybody else kind of worked hard enough to get to the NBA, and they were all competitors. Let me not take anything away from Allen Iverson in the being a competitor on the court, but still having that drive to continuously get better every day. I feel like after Jordan, a lot of players kind of, once they got to the NBA, they felt like they made it. And they just wanted to show how competitive they were. They wanted to show off their skills. You know, they wanted to be the next Michael Jordan, which is what we've been looking for, over 20 years now. So there was a couple of things that JxmyHighRoller said that I think, so he said, again, while trying to say that players were more skilled because of evolution, but he also said that the NBA is favoring offense. So again, to me, if you're and he said favoring offense, but I feel like the more correct words are the NBA has made offense easier. The NBA has made offense easier. We all know this. And I feel like a lot of people try to sugarcoat that fact by saying the NBA favors offense. No, the NBA has made offense easier. So again, to me, when you're talking about what created Michael Jordan, It's obstacles. Again, this is why I say we're not going to see another Michael Jordan in today's NBA. There's not enough obstacles for a player to go over to bring out that level of competitiveness to really test and make a player have to overcome something drastic like Michael Jordan had to overcome the Pistons. Like that was a serious situation that Michael Jordan had to overcome. And again, I've said this. To me, without the Pistons, we don't necessarily see a 6-0 Michael Jordan. I still think we see a Michael Jordan with multiple championships, but I'm not sure we see the 6-0 Michael Jordan because I believe the Detroit Pistons made Michael Jordan invincible. Really, I believe they put him through something that once he overcame it, he couldn't be beat again because he couldn't be intimidated. You couldn't play physical enough with him to stop him. I mean, I think he averaged, 36 points against Detroit or something? And that was with all that physicalness. So, yeah, I think the culture and the timing is what creates the best product, so to speak. And the product we're talking about is the NBA. I think it has to be a time where the passion and the skill together are at its apex. So if you want to look at it like these players are more skilled, even if you look at it like that, these players don't have the same kind of passion for the game. And here we go. You cannot argue with me on this. You cannot say it's just the culture that the reason these players are trying to sit out as many games as possible. When you're passionate about something, you want to do it all the time. Again, going back to Michael Jordan and the love of the game clause that he had. The love of the game clause saying that I don't care what you owners and coaches say, I'm allowed to play this game whenever I want because that's what I'm going to do because I love basketball. Whereas today's players with this load management and all this stuff, you cannot tell me with a straight face that these players are just as passionate about the game. They're not. What they're passionate about is money and praise and accolades, and not accolades through hard work. They're perfectly fine with getting accolades with teaming up with each other. So yeah, to me, the 90s was the ultimate time when the passion and the skills were simultaneously at their best. Again, even if you want to argue the more skilled thing, which is not, again, you have to take into consideration that it's easier to score. You have to take into consideration the rule changes. Now, so to me, if you want to say players have better handles, what you need to say is players are allowed to have better handles. But if you handicap these players with the same rules of the 90s, saying, hey, now you can't put your hand under the ball. In the case of LeBron James, you can't lose control of the ball and then just pick it up and start dribbling it again. You can't take 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 steps because there's plays with LeBron James taking 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 steps. If you want to give them the same rules as the 90s, then they're going to look more like 90s players. And again, I classify this as flash. Like, they may be flashy, but like I said, who's the better player? The player that has to execute 6 or 7 dribble moves to get past, or the player that can execute in two or 3 dribbles and score? Which one's better? But anyway, I went on long enough, and I could probably keep going on this. But yeah, to me, that this whole thing that JxmyHighRoller is trying to say about definitely players are better today. Again, I don't believe 50 years from now that we're going to definitively say that the game is better. I think a lot depends on the culture at the time. And if we're living in an entitled culture, it's no way the product could be better. Because half of it is caring. It is caring about what you do. It is caring about the fans who allow you to do what you do. And this is what's not happening today. This is what's missing. This is why the league is not competitive, because the priorities aren't on the right thing. They don't actually care about basketball like that anymore. They care about the money. They care about the praise. They don't care about the fans like that anymore. They care about trying to get as much money for the least work as possible. And again, that's why you cannot, with a straight face, with any kind of logic, definitively say that these players are as passionate about the game. And again, this the whole David and Goliath thing, you know, or the whole saying that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. That is a saying for a reason. Because a lot of times it boils down to who wants it more. And then in closing, let me say this, because he also said something about these players being better shooters. And I feel like there's no way to tell that unless you allow, again, I'm going to bring this up one more time. Kevin Durant, JxmyHighRoller. Remember the series with Kevin Durant when he was derailed because Boston was allowed to play a little bit of physical defense. You cannot definitively say these guys are better shooters unless they're shooting under the same conditions as the players in the 90s. Unless they're shooting against someone checking them. And see, here's the thing about the physical defense that I think people don't talk about enough is this as well. Not only does the physical defense hinder you in the moment, like in the exact moment when you're trying to execute a crossover or you're trying to spin off a defender, but that also wears you down over time as well. It wears you down over the course of the game. It wears you down over the course of games and weeks and months in the season. So again, you cannot classify these players as better shooters unless they are actually having to execute under the same conditions. You can't even really classify them as better ball handlers unless they're having to execute under the same conditions. But anyway, we are going to hold up here. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Have you guys had a chance to check out the whole JxmyHighRoller video we're done with the 90s? Have you had a chance to check out some of the other content creators' responses to it? Dreamers Pro, Sports and Fitness Rants. Let me know what you think about that video if you've had a chance to check it out. You all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time. All right.